Hi, everyone. Hello again. Good evening. I'm Cindy Harrison. Thank you for joining us here in Artfully Connected with Cindy Harrison Facebook group. And tonight, Meet the Artist is featuring Karen Ortman.
Hello. Good to know that with Facebook Live, we're getting out there. Otherwise, we're not.
This is very true. We are not, if at least I know I'm not. I get to go out to shovel my mom's driveway like I did today, but that's about it. So thank you for being here tonight. I'm so anxious and
Thank you for
excited
having me.
to hear about your artful journey, as well as I bet you there's a lot of people here that are also interested. And thank you for joining us. If you're watching the replay, thank you for taking that time out to watch
Yes,
this
thank you.
artist. And I want to just give the people a few minutes to find us because sometimes it's hard to find us.
Hmm.
I need to go ahead and mark this as an announcement, which will make it a little easier. I get that a lot. They look and they're looking, they can't find us. So, how are you today, Karen?
This has been an absolutely awesome day. I've learned a lot today.
As we should learn every day. We should learn a lot every day.
Yeah, I
Um, Go ahead.
was able to take a class with Cindy this morning. How to Zoom 101, how to reach the world. And, it's totally accurate. We are relearning how to reach out. And it kind of reminds me of that old slogan, reach out and touch someone. But we're using Zoom.
We are, and that is, how we do it. So we've got some people who are joining us tonight. So thank you so much. And I hope that the others can find us. And we're just going to go right into it. And
Okay.
so the first question of the evening is always the easiest, and they might get a little harder, no promises. But where are you from?
Currently, we live in San Diego area, North County. We've been here for, I hope I get this correct, 32 years, which doesn't seem possible. It seems like we moved here 4 or 5 years ago, but we've been here over 30 years.
Wow,
Prior
32 years?
in Southern California.
Wow. And
So if you're checking, that makes me semi-native.
what did they consider native?
You had to be born here. But 32 years, you get a card, it says semi, no, you don't, but sort of semi-native, right?
There you go. You can claim it.
Yeah.
So we got people joining every minute. There's more people joining us. So thank you from
Well,
Canada.
yeah, and we kind of floated around. I was raised in Montana on a cattle ranch and met my husband in Montana, married, moved to Iowa to his birthplace, and then had our children there, moved to Colorado. And I really feel like we were there for 3 weeks and then moved to California. We were actually in Colorado for 7 years. It was beautiful, wonderful. And then we moved to California, equally beautiful, equally wonderful.
So you don't think you'll ever go back to either Iowa or see, I thought maybe your kids were born in California.
No, they were in grade school by the time we moved here. We probably won't go back to either of our home states other than to visit. Um, we probably will find another area of the country that's a little bit easier to be retired in and probably do that when and if my husband ever decides to retire. I never met a man who loves his job more than he does.
Well, there's nothing bad about that.
Nothing.
So,
Absolutely nothing.
so you do you come from an artistic family?
Very. My dad was such an artist. And believe me, I looked up to him until I was about 9 years old and realized that everything that he did was paint by number.
Honestly?
Honestly. And so my first painting that I ever did, he wasn't real thrilled with me, but I took one of his paint by number kits and turned it over, and I painted the back of his board with his paint by number paints my way. And I looked out the window and painted what I saw out there.
I have to say though, it brings back the memory. My mom did a paint by number. I think she might still have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is.
Well,
No,
and it's so funny because there was a time in the late 90s where paint by number, literal paint by number panels were highly collectible. So that's kind of funny to me too. But that's how I really thought he was onto something. I thought he knew his stuff and he was just doing paint by number.
so is he the only one that had exhibited any kind of creative
Yeah.
bone in his body?
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
you've got children. Did any of them have any artistic?
Both of my girls are extremely artistic, but I probably killed that by making them do pattern packets for me. So it was child labor, and they still kind of complain about it. Both of them are very good little artists, but what they both excel at is decorating. Go figure.
That is an art form. That is
It is.
yeah. That is an
It
art
is.
form. So that's wonderful though.
Yeah.
That they have that ability.
But the grandkids, now that's another thing. I have 4, and they paint with me enough that I can see different types of abilities, but I'm the typical grandmother. He painted a stick figure, and as far as I'm concerned, that was really close to Mona Lisa. I'm kind of over the moon about my grandkids.
You're not biased at all.
None. No, no.
Oh, I love it. So, so you're seeing that your art form or your love of art will live on. So
Yeah.
that's
And they like being in the studio with me, so that's good.
it's excellent. So Judy's saying, which thank you by the way for the comments, and if you have any questions for Karen, please do pose them. Judy is saying, not sure if you remember me. I painted with you in your garage with Bonnie and a few others around 1994. I still have my piece with the 3 angels. You were doing a piece with a chicken.
Oh my goodness, that is a while ago. And I've done several chicken pieces. My first book had a lot of chickens in it. And I wish I could remember absolutely everybody. But what a special time.
Does that like your need to paint chickens, and does that go back to you being on that cattle farm or?
It goes back to a picture of my grandmother holding her pet chicken called Big Red. And I always loved that picture of her as a little girl holding that chicken, and that's where my love of chickens came from.
That would make sense. There you go.
But not real chickens. They're kind of mean. And you have to kind of be careful with, I have to be careful with them. They kind of like to peck me.
Oh, my daughter ordered some around Easter time and got the eggs, not this year, but like several years ago, and got the eggs and hatched them. So they're all her babies. And they would come
Aw,
up and snuggle. They still do, what the few that are left still like snuggle with her. And she
I
talks
love
to them,
that.
and yeah, and she just loves them and they love her. So they don't peck her, which is good. The goat, on the other hand, is
Forget the goat.
not a sweetheart. So the next wonderful question is, so how old were you when you started painting?
Well, when I started painting, I was about 11 years old. And I seriously used my dad's paint by numbers. And the first one, he wasn't too thrilled. And then after that, he didn't care. And I would find hard pieces of cardboard and use those for canvas. We didn't have a lot, but I would use that. And then somewhere along the line, he felt that I had a little bit of promise, and he had a friend who was a very well-noted Western artist. And at age 14, I was able to take classes with Sandy, and it just opened up a whole world to me that I didn't even know existed. And it was magical.
That's cool. So at 14, you started to learn more about art
Absolutely.
and shadows and highlights, and
Mm-hmm.
that's amazing. That's wonderful. When did you start teaching? I mean, did you start, I mean, obviously at 11 you were doing your own thing. You already were designing even though you didn't know what designing was, right?
Well, I think I really started teaching when I was about 6 years old, because I would correct the other kids in class and tell them, no, that's not the color. And you can make tree trunks black if you want to. So I was kind of a know-it-all then.
you're you're a troublemaker.
Pretty much.
Oh my God. I have to say,
Yeah,
my,
pretty much.
we always paint tree trunks browns, right? They're
Right.
kind of brown. And my daughter grew up and to say, they're not brown, mother, they're gray.
Yeah. Well, it was so funny. I can remember my favorite gift of all time. I was 5 years old, and my uncle gave me a box of 64 crayons with a sharpener in the back. And I must have gone through those crayons really fast because he was kind of irritated with me that I needed a new box. But I like sharp crayons.
So did you use all the crayons, or did you find that you had certain ones that were
Oh,
your favorite colors?
heck no, I made color. In that box of 64 crayons, it was really loaded with color, but I had to use the one that was in between the orange and the red orange. I like the one in between, so I combined them.
You are a troublemaker.
Pretty much. I have always loved mixing color. And it seems to be kind of intrinsic for me. It's something that I see, and it's easy. And everybody sees color a little bit differently. There's, a real physiological reason for that. I won't get into it, but everybody sees color a little bit differently. And aren't we glad? Because that's what makes our world go round. Besides, Sherwin-Williams would not know what to do if they didn't have a new color palette every year.
That's for sure. Benjamin Moore too.
Yeah, exactly. So, forget Pantone. We just have to come up with new colors all the time.
So once you started taking the classes when at 14, were you what was the medium that you started with?
Oil paint.
It was straight oils. So
Yeah,
that's why you love mixing so much, right?
I think it is. I think the color I remember is burnt umber. that was the color that I think I used the most, because I never did learn to draw and then transfer a pattern. I literally was taught and learned to use a long handled brush and draw right on my canvas. And that was done with Turpenoid and burnt umber.
Cool. That's neat. So how long after you started painting in oils and where we could tell that you were already designing your own, you painted what you saw, so you were already designing and discovering your own style. When did you start, or when did you decide that you were going to start teaching, like professionally teaching?
That was quite a bit later. We had married and moved to Iowa, and we had, like everybody else, we had two thin dimes, and I just loved decorating my house, and I didn't have a whole lot to decorate it with. And so a girlfriend asked me if I wanted to go to a sorority auction. And it was the philanthropic sorority, and they had people that brought in toll painting. And it was a fundraiser, and I couldn't afford anything. And I looked at that stuff and I went, bet I can do that. But I don't know how to start. So I said something to her. She goes, well, I paint every Wednesday. Why don't you come with me? Okay, good. Well, she painted at a ceramic studio. So I have the wind up Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus that waltz around their brick chimney. I have several of the trees that have the multi-lights. I love those. Little holly hoppy plaques that I did for the girls' rooms. And a lot of cash pots with one strokes and that type of thing. Love doing it, but it still wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted those cute plaques. And so another year forward, we went to the same auction. And this time, one of the ladies who had painted some of the stuff said, and if anybody wants to take classes, I'm teaching in this town in Iowa. And so that's what got me started in toll painting. And of course, I still tell people what to do. And I don't know, it just became what I did. I told them, and then they paid me to do it. And it just evolved.
Isn't that wonderful, though?
I guess, it's scary to think back about what I didn't know and what maybe I told them to do that wasn't correct. But we were all around the kitchen table. In my situation, initially, I taught in a garage studio. And by the time we had moved to California, it was really nice because it was warm enough year round to teach in sometimes too warm, to teach in my garage with the open rafters and the open shelves and the washer and dryer going. But we made it cozy and homey, and that's where I taught.
But the bottom line is, whether you did it right or wrong or whatever, they enjoyed themselves. They had a great time, and you were doing something that you love to do, right?
Honestly, we all learned together.
That's wonderful. Is there a favorite subject matter that you like to paint?
It's excuse me. It's usually whatever I'm working on at the time. There are still things that kind of intimidate me, and one of them, I'll be really honest, is realism. Particularly sharp focus realism. That has never been something I've aspired to, because in my mind, I couldn't improve on the photograph. So that is something I've kind of stayed away from. But the older I get, the more I paint, the more I realize how much I love Impressionism. I think for me, art has served a purpose all the way through. And now it's to the point where I'm kind of painting for myself. I'm painting the things that I love. And one week that could be a portrait, the next week it could be a landscape, and then a floral. But I am trying to paint more from reality, less from memory, and less from photograph.
Which was my next question, was how do you come up with your design?
You know what? I don't know, Cindy. It's I will. There's a. I have to be accurate in that the one thing that really grabs my attention every time is going to be color. It can be outside the shadows. Sometimes the deep purples and blues and greens in the shadows absolutely fascinate me. The play of light when you're driving down a road and it's lined with trees and you're driving in and out of that light, that just fascinates me. What happens with color? Yeah, everybody has seen the ball where the ball's cut in two and the top part of it is against a high key background. The bottom of it is on a low key background. The ball is the same color, but it changes depending on which background it's against. And that has always been a fascination for me.
Cool. So I've heard many artists say that their favorite is what they're doing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
A few minutes ago.
And it's usually emotional, don't you think?
Yeah.
You know, you respond to color emotionally, you respond to subject matter emotionally. And so if you're executing something, it's because you had an idea and it just has to come out.
There you go. So when you say you're less at looking at the photographs or whatever, so how are you coming up if you're not using your memory and you're not using a photograph? Is it you have the item in front of you?
Yeah, I do still life setups.
Oh,
I paint from live flowers, or I'm starting more frequently to paint live plein air.
that's exciting.
Yeah,
That's
and it's hard.
it's coming back too. Plein air
Yeah,
is coming back into style.
yeah, it is. But I would love to paint a realistic bumblebee, but they don't set still. So I would have to paint from a picture or a botanical. And I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit lazy, but I don't really want to chase down a photographer to get permission and make sure that I have that on file to paint from his photograph. And another reason I kind of am trying to shy away from the reference photos unless I've taken them is because that's their form of art too. They are artistic in their photograph, and the amount of stuff that they do to capture that image, I think, is mind-boggling.
It definitely is a form of art,
It
and
is.
yeah, and they have that eye. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's a different eye, but yeah, it's trained.
And I appreciate the fact that they also are artistic, and I don't want to take their artistic adventure away from them by telling them, yeah, I want to improve on it. I want to paint it, because I don't know that that is an improvement.
No, no, sometimes not.
You know, sometimes it's an impetus, but I don't know that it's an improvement.
Now you said you started in oils.
Hmm.
Are you still painting in oils? What?
I went away from oils for a long time because I developed a rash painting on my hand. But I've gotten back into them, and with ways of making my studio safer. They still paint the same, but my acrylics paint like my oils. And I think I've brought forward um, from my oil painting years and teaching oil landscape and all that, I've been able to bring all of that forward into the acrylics. And I'm very, very happy painting both in oils and acrylics.
Do you have a favorite medium?
Acrylic. And at this point, and that changes, my two favorite paints are Jo Sonja Chroma, but I love the Chroma Atelier too, a little bit heavier, and golden open body and acrylic. I love them, and I'm starting to use the fluid acrylic too, and I'm absolutely in love with the fluid acrylic.
Cool.
So there's a lot out there. I mean, my goodness.
There is. Do you have a favorite technique?
Since it's changing as we speak, I think I'm very much I'm really leaning towards impressionistic. If you give, and the reason I am is because you can use so many different type of techniques in that style of painting. You can layer backgrounds, you can layer one of the things that I really like right now, and I'm not doing it because it goes back a little bit to hobby-ish, but I love the look, are the layers of stenciling and backgrounds and script stencils imposed over the top of a painting. I think it's just stunning. And it kind of reminds me of signage from some of the really great illustrators right after the turn of the century, the 1900s. The illustrations then were incredible. And the illustrations were used for posters and media, and then this wonderful script was always put with it, and just kind of reminds me of that.
You love that. Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have a favorite brush in your art world?
Again, depends on what I'm doing. Florals, I will not do anything except filberts with florals. I don't know how. I do use a 3/4 inch flat brush on a lot of stuff. But a good brush, clean down by the ferrule, an incredible fine line chisel on it. And then don't always wait to use your good brushes. Use them now. Use them right away. Because there isn't anything like a good brush to make your painting better.
There you go. I know I still have brushes in the original package. I've never opened.
My God, use them.
Some of them I don't even know why I bought them and how I'm supposed to use them. So that's
well, and that's true. That is true. But yeah, I love nothing better than opening a new brush and playing with it.
Cool. So what I just want to take this moment to thank everybody who is with us tonight and watching this interview and enjoying it, I hope. And if you have any questions for Karen, I do welcome them. I can't think of all the questions all the time, so I always look for help from the audience to ask questions. Do you have any pieces of your artwork handy that you can show off?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Let me grab.
Let's say, Marcia, is it snowing in Connecticut now? Because I'm hoping it's not snowing here in New Hampshire. So what do you have to show us?
Okay, let's back it up. A little bit of a glare. I'm teaching this for our chapter this coming Saturday. It's called Red Love and very impressionistic. I'm holding it the wrong way. Can you see it a little bit better color that way?
Yeah, hold it towards your right, like more in front of your face. But I like the angle. Yeah, that's good right there.
This is very impressionistic, but it's geraniums in a pitcher, and that pitcher is a stainless steel pitcher from a U.S. Navy ship. So this is what would have held milk or water. It's massive and it's beat up and it has a patina on it. And I had just thrown some silk geraniums into it to get them out of the way, turned around and looked at it and said, oh, okay. Brought it over and started painting it.
And that's in acrylics?
Yep. These are Joe Sonia's.
Joe Sonia, I was going to ask. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, everyone is loving it. They're saying it's gorgeous.
It's repetitive and easy. And that once you get it going, it's easy enough. I think one of the things I like about that is there is a play between the warm and the cool reds. And there's just a play of the juxtaposition between the two that really give the piece kind of a pop and a pizzazz.
It really does. It really does. Have you ever painted I don't know, is it impasto when it's raised?
Only in stroke work with Kleister medium. Yeah, and this one I did try to leave a little bit more body, just because I was kind of playing around with that. So I did put a little bit of Kleister medium with it. And what it does is it also makes the paint a little bit transparent. And that's something you kind of, as you play with paint, you get to learn the properties of paint. Not that that's important to everyone. If you're doing a color block, maybe it isn't all that important to know that when you glaze with something that's a little bit transparent or translucent. But when you get away from the color blocking, then absolutely, you kind of need to know how your paint's going to react. And to me, that's what is fun.
So, a question from the audience, and thank you for asking questions. Do you always use Jo Sonia paints with her mediums? Because you mentioned Kleister medium.
I do. And I don't use a ton of mediums, though. I'm an old oil painter. So the medium in oil is terp. And that's kind of what I learned. Very carcinogenic, and that's not how I paint now with oils. It's entirely different. But because of that, when I transferred what limited knowledge I had to the acrylic, I used water. And I used the brush the same way, and I expected my transparent colors and my opaque colors to work the same way, and they did. And a lot of people say that you paint holes with Jo Sonia's, and it's just like anything. It requires a tiny bit of patience so that the layer that you laid down films over so that you're not lifting it. It's gouache. That means it's going to reconstitute. So, you have to have a little bit of patience and move on maybe to another spot and work it before you go back. But I find Joe's to be as accepting of technique as oil painting.
Cool. I know what you mean about the holes, because I myself am, I have a challenge myself once a year to paint in Joe Sonia because I am a bottle baby and I like things to
Yeah.
put them down. I want them to stay there. I don't want them to
Yep.
reconstitute. So I would paint once a year. And I have to say, I created many a hole. However, painting with Bobby Takashima and painting with Helen Barrick and painting with Rosemary West, they made you feel like I could paint with Joe Sonia every day, all day,
Yeah.
and not have a hole. So it was the patience.
Honestly, I think there are so many teachers that I've had through the years, and I have a really good education, and it is all of our industry leaders that I've learned from. And the one thing that I can hear Helen Cavan say is, don't play in it. And that's what she used to say, don't play in it. And she was right. You need to develop a little bit of patience and let it dry. And I just have never run into huge roadblocks with Joe's. But if I really want to lay down a ton of layers, I know at some point I'm going to have to isolate those with clear glaze medium, but I have to let the medium dry. And it's, you have to know what the properties of your paint colors are and when to add what mediums. And we have such incredible information at our fingertips on the internet, and almost every teacher is more than willing, if you call them or drop them an email, they'll let you know. You don't have to take a class to learn the secret of letting it dry. But we've been blessed. Our whole industry started out around a kitchen table. That was where we were educated. It's where we did kind of a pivot and became educators. And then we grew, and now we're right back around the kitchen table with our Zoom classes again. And I just find it to be a really comfortable place to be. And we know more. We have more available to play with. And I think because of the internet, our whole concept of what to paint has opened up. And I don't know about you guys, but if you get on any of the painting groups and you look at what people are posting that they are painting on a weekly or a monthly basis, it's pretty mind-blowing how incredibly good the painters are.
It is amazing. I love seeing when people post
Yep.
painted items on in the group. So keep those coming, because I really do. I look at them all and they're beautiful.
They are, and they inspire, and they make you want to, get into the studio. And you don't always have to change out of your pajamas either.
No, and nobody will tell.
Nope.
Do you have a tip? Let's see, your best tip that you would give someone. I mean, I know you touched on patience with the paints and stuff, but do you have a tip that you like to give to people?
I do. It's not always everybody's favorite thing, but I have utilized a gray palette paper forever. I honestly cannot paint from a white background onto a piece that I'm working on. It is so hard for me to make that chroma change in my head. I know what I want to see, but if I've started off of the white background, I don't know what it is about my eyes, but it takes a while for my brain to catch up with what my eyes are seeing. And so it's less stressful for me to use a gray paper palette. But if you're using white paper palette and you want to use the gray, or all you have to do, you don't have to go buy it. You just take a black piece of construction paper or black cardstock, slip it underneath the white, you've got a gray palette. So you don't have to spend the money on expensive things to get the benefit.
That's good to know, that you could just slip that black piece underneath the white palette. I never thought about that. So
And it grays it right up.
I'm gonna have to try that.
Works.
Oh,
And then the other thing, vellum through a printer. One of my favorites.
so you don't have to trace.
Exactly. You tell me who that isn't a favorite of. That's incredible that we have that now available.
It is. It is. So, do you happen to have the project that you are going to be doing for webinars in front of you?
I have it handy.
Ooh, please show and tell.
Here we go again. See, I can't figure out. There we go. That's a little bit better.
You're doing fine. So, I love the glass. And I mean, the flowers are beautiful, of course, but the glass is always, I think glass is always intimidating to, or at least intimidating to most people.
And it doesn't really need to be intimidating because there are a few key things that make it easier to do. But I think it's just an understanding of what it is you're accomplishing. You see through glass. Just think of that. You see through glass. What would you see when you're seeing through? Doesn't matter what color the glass is, you see through. And that's,
These are done with Jo Sonia.
yep.
There was a question from Paula saying, do you use glazing medium to layer Jo Sonia paint? Your Jo Sonia?
I do. I frequently do. And where I use it is usually in the final process where I want to see a bit of contrast and want to bring the contrast into focus. I will use the glazing then. Glazing also at the end of a painting really unifies all of the pieces and parts. And I will use it there. Let alone you use it to isolate different areas, kind of like a mask. If you make a mistake, you can wipe it off. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
And I don't ever use anything to literally wipe against the gouache with. I will use a clean brush that's been dampened and blotted, pulled to chisel, and that's what I use to clean up. I've seen people use Q-tips, and that's good. I guess that works for some people. For me, I always get just a little bit too industrious and take off a little bit more than I want to. So I'm better left to just lift it with a damp brush.
There you go. So Karen was saying she likes how you did the background shadows.
Thank you.
Paula is saying, do you ever put your lights and darks on with oils?
You know, I never have done that. That's interesting. I have never even thought about doing that, but wow, that might be something that would be really a whole lot of fun to try.
Could be, could be. And the next question is there deco art substitutes for the colors?
I don't I don't do deco art substitutes, and the reason I don't is because I don't have them. And it would be unfair of me to tell you that my yellow orange is deco arts and I'm taking somebody else's idea of what that is. And if I haven't used it or played with it, I don't know what's going to happen to that color. So I prefer not to make those judgments, but have a really good friend who has helped me from time to time come up with substitutions. So if that is something that is really necessary for you, drop me an email and I will give you the knowledge that she and I have worked through for this particular project.
Cool. So do you happen to have the geranium that you're going to be doing as the make it and take it in this group? Is that
Yes.
just like a portion of what you're doing for the chapter this weekend?
No, this is from a different project. And this is what Cindy is referring to. It's just a real quick little study. This is on canvas board and this one is on a gallery wrapped canvas. But it's, again, it's that pop and sizzle that you get when you use both warm and cool tones of red. Love them. I think red must be one of my favorite colors.
Could be.
Mm-hmm. Could be.
I love the tones that how you incorporate all the and that's why I asked you about the impasto earlier, because even on the bigger one, I swear like the petals look like they're coming
Kind
off.
of raised.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. Well, there is a little bit more because I did use some clyster. There is a little bit more of that in this one. I
And is it
it's
Leister medium that makes it stay raised?
Yes.
I
And it also makes it really transparent.
say I
So
often wonder what the difference between like the glazing and the clyster, what's the difference and why?
I wouldn't glaze with clyster because it's body. That's your impasto. That's going to create, particularly in stroke work, your stroke work is going to hold up. If you're using clyster, you're going to get a ridge, you're going to get an edge, and it's hard against soft, or it's warm against cool. So it helps hold that edge. That's what clyster does. Clear glaze, you can do a lot of stuff with clear glaze, and a tiny amount of paint can go quite a ways in unifying a painting and pulling it together. So you would pull maybe if you're working in kind of a cool area, say where the leaves are in a floral, if you wanted to warm those up, you would use a warm transparent color with your clear glaze medium. So you're not losing the value, but you're changing the intensity of that color. So you're changing the saturation, you're bringing it more towards a warm and
Interesting.
less of the cool. And so it's just fun to use.
Yeah, and it sounds
And
like
you,
I need to
you
play.
really, yeah, you really just dance around with your brush. It's what you do.
So Karen's asking, well, her statement is, my Joe Sonia paints are more than 10 years old. Because they are in a tube, I can't stir them like I can do the Americana paints. How do I make sure they have not separated, or they have not broken down or separated?
Sometimes they do. What I do with my tubes is I shake them. And if there's liquid sloshing around, we've got some separation. If you haven't undone the lid, sometimes that binder can be reconstituted back through the paint. If when you express that and you smell kind of an ammonia smell, your binder has pretty well separated. 10 years old, I have Atelier paint that I bought over 35 years ago that is the same tube paint that Joe Sonia's are, made by Chroma. They're still viable. I have old tubes of Joe's that are still viable. Sometimes I think it has to do with the pigment. The plastic absolutely does factor in. The softer, older tubes, I haven't had as much trouble with separation. The newer plastic, there's a little bit more of a problem with separation, but normally you can shake it up. Two, if it has become really thick and there's a lot of viscosity to it, you can put some of that out on your palette with your flow medium and palette knife. You can bring that back to a consistency that you can work with. But I wouldn't do it with water. You're stretching the binder, you're stretching the paint too far. And if you've got suds, it's not going to be light fast. It's not going to hold up. So they're very much a viable paint for a long time. I don't know about the bottle paints. I'm guessing they're equally viable for a long time. That's kind of the best I can tell you.
So hope that helps
Paints,
you.
yeah, paints will get old. There's no two ways about it. I kind of think about, just think about it this way. When you're cooking, you don't want to let your olive oil set in the cupboard without using it and then uncork it and then smell it, maybe even taste it a little bit just to see if it's turned rancid. You don't want to cook with that stuff. So if your paint has totally separated, maybe consider getting a new tube and not painting with that stuff. That's kind of the way I see it.
There you go. When in doubt, throw it out.
Pretty much, yeah. Or if you're really convinced that it shouldn't have, give Chroma a call. They will work with you. Don't badmouth them. Give them a call and say, hey, I've had this too for 17 years and I only opened it one time and it's getting separated and I don't think it should have. Tell them. They'll work with you.
Cool. I just gave a lot of mine away because I stopped taking those challenges, but I need to reinvest, I think, because I love the pigment. I really do.
It's absolutely incredible pigment. It truly is.
So other than the chapter that you're teaching this weekend coming, is it?
Mm-hmm.
And for Artful Webinars, is there other places you're teaching?
Basically right now, chapters in Southern California. And when I get to my daughters in Texas, we have pop-up classes all the time. She'll let a couple of my friends, a couple of her friends know that I'm going to be in town. And it's always a pop-up class. And they let everybody know on Facebook and it fills up.
There you go. That's wonderful. When are you going to be in town in Texas next?
We'll be in San Antonio the third week of March.
Oh, there you go. So look for, if you're in around that area, look for a pop-up or email Karen.
Yeah.
Do you want to share your email address, Karen?
It's small case, KLEEORTMAN @gmail.com.
Okay, I just put it in the chat area. So let's see. Karen keeps referring to the Joe as a gouache. They are. Are they truly a gouache?
Yes.
I guess is the question.
Acrylic gouache, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I probably shouldn't refer to it as gouache because that's confusing to people that know it as an acrylic. I'm sorry, I was introduced to it as a gouache, and that's my terminology for it. So I apologize if that's confusing to you, but it is an acrylic gouache.
Yeah, because it says right on the tubes acrylic gouache.
Yeah. And gouache works a little bit different than an acrylic in that it does reconstitute, but gouache also does not have, because it doesn't have the additives, it doesn't have a highly reflective surface when it dries. It's a little bit more matte. And it does depend upon what you want as a final product. I guess with so many different paint brands available, they all act just a little bit differently. I have found that for myself, for toll painting, Joe Sonia is the only way to go. And for canvas painting, I generally, depending on the size of the canvas, will go to golden. Um, but still, if I'm going to be teaching SDP chapters or something like that, I generally have the stick to Joe's, because there's a big cost differential, and it's expensive to move to another medium, and it's not entirely necessary to do that.
Vera is asking, can you substitute the Joe Sonia paints with heritage or traditions paint?
Absolutely.
So she could
Absolutely.
go where to find the matchup, because I know you.
Yeah, and that I can't tell you because I don't have those paints.
Right. Is there a website? Does she go to DecoArt to find out what they?
Yeah, both Joe Sonia and DecoArt have conversions. I think I don't know who did this. Somebody, I think there's a bird on the cover. It's really cute. Has done conversions between most of the major paint companies, and I think that's fairly accurate. It's just not anything that I've done. I've kind of had my head down, and grandkids were born, and I've spent a lot of time with those babies, and they're now approaching teenage, and I have time. So I'm going to get back into it.
Very good. So Marsh is asking, is a sunflower painted with Joe Sonia paints? I think we.
Yes, ma'am. It certainly is. It really is. It's a very flat, matte, except I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, it's flat matte, except where the clear glaze is, and then it's a little bit shiny.
So before we got live tonight, I asked where can people go to see more of your pattern packets and stuff like that. So
I promise, I really, really promise, I am not technologically advanced. I am really one of the cave women when it comes to all of this array. I did have a website for a time and let it lapse because I just let it lapse. I was a little bit lazy and really spent a lot of time with the grandkids. And I am going to, we're in the works. We have an Etsy shop that will be open within a few weeks. So if you can be patient.
cool.
If you can't, just email me and we'll visit and I can accommodate.
And here's a good question. Ray was asking, do we need a pattern for the Make It class? And I believe you provided one.
I did.
If it's not in the group files yet, I will post it in there, and I'll also post it under the event. So
and it's easy enough. You wouldn't necessarily have to have a pattern.
Yeah,
you could wing it.
Exactly. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you so much, Karen, for joining me and joining the Alpha Webinars family. And I look forward to watching you paint the lovely geranium coming soon. I think it's is it Thursday, Friday night?
Thursday
Night. at
Yeah, I
7
think so.
p.m. Yeah, 7 p.m. here in the Artfully Connected Facebook group. And if you love these
4
programs and meeting the artists, then please tell your friends to join the group, but make sure to remind them they need to answer a few questions first. I don't always just accept people, but we have a lot more coming down the road. So stay tuned, look at our events, look at our announcements. And again, thank you so much, Karen. It was a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Cindy. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Have a great night, everyone.
You too. Thanks, people.